alliance on edge as Russian drones enter Poland. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
All the news you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
A worrying escalation. Poland, a member of the NATO alliance, says it has shot down multiple Russian drones that entered its airspace during a wave of Russian attacks on Ukraine. The Polish government says the drones came from Belarus. They were shot down with the help of NATO allies. Speaking at NATO headquarters in Brussels, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte outlined NATO's response.
Last night, numerous drones from Russia violated Polish airspace. Our air defenses were activated and successfully ensured the defense of NATO territory, as they are designed to do. Several allies were involved alongside Poland. This included Polish F-16s, Dutch F-35s, Italian AWACS, NATO multi-role tanker transport and German Patriots. I commend the pilots and all who contributed to this quick and skillful response. The North Atlantic Council met this morning and discussed the situation in light of Poland's request for consultations under Article 4 of the Washington Treaty. Allies expressed solidarity with Poland and denounced Russia's reckless behavior.
It's not the first time Polish airspace has been violated since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but it's seen as the most serious. And Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk told that country's parliament today, Poland is closer to conflict than at any time since the Second World War.
But this situation brings us all closer to open conflict, closer than at any time since World War II. We have a full-scale war behind our Ukrainian-Russian border, but we already have something that goes beyond mere provocations in our own skies. And perhaps today we need to say it again very loudly and clearly. Poland today has a political enemy who does not hide their hostile intentions behind its eastern border, not its western border. We must focus our efforts, all our attention, all our capabilities on defending Poland against a real enemy, against a real threat.
Article 4 of the NATO treaty does not trigger military action by NATO. That's Article 5. Article 4 allows member states to request consultations when they believe their territorial integrity, political independence, or security is threatened. Here again is NATO Chief Mark Rutte.
Yes, as I said, a full assessment is ongoing. But of course, whether it was intentionally or not, it is absolutely reckless. It is absolutely dangerous. But as I said, the full assessment is ongoing. And to Putin, I mean, my message is clear. Stop the war in Ukraine. Stop the escalating war, which he is now basically mounting on innocent civilians and civilian infrastructure. Stop violating Allied airspace. And know that we stand ready. That we are vigilant and that we will defend every inch of NATO territory.
Speaking in the British Parliament in London, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the Russian action unprecedented.
Mr. Speaker, last night Russia launched drones into Poland in an unprecedented attack. I've been in touch with the Polish Prime Minister this morning to make clear our support for Poland. We will stand firm in our support for Ukraine. With our partners and through our leadership of the coalition willing, we will continue to ramp up the pressure on Putin until there's a just and lasting peace.
John Healey is the Minister of Defense in the British government. He called Russia's actions reckless and dangerous.
Poland's direct defensive military action last night is the first of its kind since Putin launched his illegal invasion in 2022. Defence Minister Koźmiak-Kamysz has rightly headed home to Poland very early this morning to deal with this attack. Russia's actions are reckless, unprecedented and dangerous. We totally condemn these attacks. And we say to President Putin, your aggression only strengthens the unity between NATO nations. And we will discuss this morning what additional support we can provide to Poland.
Poland's president, Karol Nawacki, was recently in Washington. He met with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House. At that meeting in the Oval Office, President Trump called the Russia-Ukraine war a stupid war, that he wants to see it stopped.
I think we're going to have a good solution, but they're losing soldiers at levels that nobody has seen since the Second World War. This is the worst conflict, and it's just going on and on. It's one's defense, one's offense. The offense moves a little bit, just a little bit. You take a look. They move inches. They're dropping bombs and killing everybody. The whole thing is not since the Second World War has there been anything even close to this. And they're not soldiers from my country. This is my country. But I have a power to end things.
In a statement on social media, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said Russia's incursion into Polish airspace last night was reckless and escalatory, and added that Canada stands with Poland and our NATO allies. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
There are no shortage of topics to discuss with our next guest. Avi Lewis is a documentary filmmaker, climate activist, co-authored the Leap Manifesto. He is also an associate professor at the University of British Columbia's Center for Climate Justice. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Very good. Very good. It's a real pleasure.
I'm feeling kind of nostalgic about being on City News here. I started my career at City Pulse at 6 in Toronto in 1990 in the golden age of Gord Martineau and Ann Ruskowski and The Voice, Mark Daly.
Oh, yeah.
Those
Everywhere. Everywhere. Yeah.
Oh, you're so much better at the Mark Daly than I am.
Okay. Well, let's start with your thoughts on the job Mark Carney is doing so far. Prior to Trudeau, the Liberal Party had a well-earned reputation of campaigning from the left and then governing from the right. Now, the most recent election was mostly about how to deal with Donald Trump and tariffs. But since late April and the conclusion of that election, what have you thought of the job Prime Minister Mark Carney has done?
You know, it's been kind of shocking, to be honest. I think it might be the biggest bait and switch in recent Canadian political history. Carney's doing things, when you look at the details, when you look at it closely, he's doing things that would have made Stephen Harper blush, like ramping up cuts to 15% of government spending right when the economy is probably tipping into recession. Austerity is the last thing we need. It's going to hurt people who are already struggling to get by. And these spending cuts, the plans are to pay for these gigantic, eye-watering new spending that he's planning for defense. Like he announces immediately $9 billion just to be spent between like when he announced it in June and this coming April for defense. Like it's 3 times what rolling out pharmacare would have cost us in 1 year. And it's like, I know people are feeling anxious and insecure these days. Everybody is. But a military spending bonanza is not going to make people feel any more secure. It's just bending the knee to Trump, you know? And then that's only the first course, because then they're planning to ramp it up to $150 billion a year in defense spending a decade from now, 5% of our GDP. Again, just capitulating to Trump's demands. Like, you know what else is 5% of our GDP, Rob? The entire education system. This is how he's reconceiving our economy. And I don't think this is what Canadians voted for.
Okay, so how do you think then progressive voters should feel about what they're hearing from the Prime Minister then?
Well, I just think he's listening to the wrong people. He's got the completely wrong priorities. Like he's not prioritizing what we're all going through. Like if we're going to go to war with massive spending, we should go to war against the real threat that is facing Canadians, which is, for me, the everyday emergency of just trying to get by in an impossible economy. Like, why is it $100 for a cell phone plan? $300 for a cart of groceries? How come so many people are paying $3,000 a month or more in rent or mortgage payments? Why is the cost of living so high? I think we know. It's because governments won't actually govern. And we've got a small number of corporations in a trench coat controlling every part of our economy. Like we got 3 cell phone providers, we got 3 grocery giants, we got 5 big banks, 5 big oil companies, and they're all price fixing and jacking up the cost of everything because government lets them. Like my grandfather, David Lewis, who was the leader of the NDP in the early 70s, he was famous for running this campaign against the corporate welfare bums in 1972. I think he'd be rolling in his grave to see the level of profiteering today when people are facing such hardship in their daily lives. But he had this quote in the 70s, which I think is like so apropos today. He said, "The government and big business are holding hands in your pocket." And to me, that is the actual crisis facing Canada.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about climate policy. Carbon tax gone, EV sales mandate under review, clean fuel regulations to be amended. Radio Canada is reporting today that a list will be released of projects in the national interest. There won't be a pipeline on there, but there could be LNG facilities. Mr. Carney has spoken about Bay du Nord, offshore Newfoundland, mining projects. What do you think about how Mr. Carney views the environment and the economy?
Well, we need to do big things. I do agree with that. And we need to make Canada's economy more self-sufficient and protect it from the United States. You can't buy a washing machine in Canada that's made in Canada because we sold out all of our domestic manufacturing in the free trade era, where all those factories closed down and production moved to other countries. A lot of them in the United States where they just have no regulation, lesser regulations and no unions. So I think we do need to do big projects in the national interest. But the thing is, look, for like more than 158 years, this country, our main idea of economic progress has been turning nature into money. And I just wonder whether we're ever going to have a new idea and think about other things that we could do, like focus on where most jobs are in the economy, the service sector and retail, and bring back manufacturing and actually make things here in Canada that we need in Canada instead of just shipping finite resources overseas. As far as climate goes, Carney as a banker should know that last year the world spent $2.2 trillion investing in renewable electricity generation, renewable energy, and half that on oil and gas, on fossil fuels. So the tipping point is already tipped. China is installing like the equivalent of 3 coal-fired power plants of solar every single day. California, 4th largest economy on Earth, is using 40% less gas than it did just 2 years ago because they're getting all renewables for significant parts of the year. So it's time to move on, folks. And if we're going to be investing in these big nation-building projects, let's bring back Canadian jobs and building things in Canada. Let's have power lines, not pipelines, so we can actually trade electricity across this massive country and get a 21st century grid installed, tons of great union jobs and that kind of infrastructure, and actually do things that are going to prepare us for the future and share the wealth instead of just pumping up corporate profits.
Just hang on, Avi, and we'll be right back. I have a few more questions for you. Avi Lewis is with us, well-known political commentator, documentary filmmaker. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Back with well-known political commentator, documentary filmmaker Avi Lewis. He's with UBC Center for Climate Justice as well. Let's turn our attention, Avi, to housing. The government is promising to double home building. Mr. Carney has said details in the next few weeks about Build Canada homes. But CMHC just said housing starts were flat through the first half of the year. Toronto is on pace for its lowest annual housing start number in 30 years. Vancouver, where you are, remains one of the most unaffordable housing markets in the world. What do you think about the government's plan to build more housing?
Well, I mean, we're in a serious crisis, Rob. It is, everybody needs somewhere to live. And like the most basic human need has just turned into the most speculated financial asset, right? In the last 20, 30 years of government policy in Canada, we got this huge housing bubble where housing has just been treated as the fastest way to make good money. and our housing market's been invaded by speculators, and we've lost touch with people need homes to live. Rent is out of control because we don't have rent control anymore that's meaningful. So I think the government saying we got to double housing starts and we're going to get into government, with this new government agency is going to be like a public housing developer. Those things sound good. I think Carney's approach is going to fail because he's stuck on this idea that he's trotted out for many, many years, that a small amount of government funding can prime the pump and, as he likes to say, catalyze this massive wave of private capital. And remember the National Infrastructure Bank that Trudeau started? They basically did nothing because it was built on the same model. We're just going to throw in $3 billion of government money, and then the private sector is going to jump on board and do 10 times that. But the thing is, there's so much corporate welfare these days that big corporations and banks and real estate companies, oil companies, they just sit back with their arms crossed waiting for government handouts. And if they're not going to get big free money, they just don't get in the game. So, and the government bought Trans Mountain, a $34 billion pipeline. And there have been so many handouts in recent years that corporations, I don't know, from their point of view, why would they spend all this money in capital investment when they know if they just sit on the sidelines long enough, the government will just give it to them? Like Trudeau handed out $50 billion in subsidies to battery makers in Southern Ontario, some of which are not even going ahead because they just want the free money. So the government's got to get back in the business of actually building housing. And we have so many millions of Canadians that are never going to be able to afford market rents and mortgages the way they are. We need a massive injection of non-market housing, co-op housing, nonprofit housing, genuinely affordable housing, and take that huge pressure out of the housing market and give millions of people places to live. It's not going to happen by just pretty pleasing the private sector to do it because there's no rules to stop them from just profiteering, which is what we see with everything else, food, everything else.
Okay. I really hope you'll come back. A lot more questions for you, but our time is always limited, as I'm sure you're aware. Thank you, though, for today. Really good to hear from you.
Now I know, Rob. It was a real pleasure talking to you. Anytime.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Yeah. Avi Lewis, documentary filmmaker, well-known in Canadian left-wing circles, climate activist, associate professor, UBC's Center for Climate Justice. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
Well, it's time for our Wednesday Newsday panel. Specific focus today, environment and climate change, because there have been many news stories about the Carney government's commitment to fighting climate change, other environmental issues. Joining us today from the Pembina Institute, Director Adam Thorn. Hi there. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
And from the Canadian Climate Institute, Executive Vice President Dale Beugin. Hi, Dale.
Hi there. Happy to be here.
Am I saying your name right, Dale?
Beugin, actually.
Beugin. Okay. I just I did the French thing there. Sorry about that.
It was French once and went to Alberta and got anglicized, so you're all good.
There you go. Okay. All right. Okay. I want to start with what your expectations were, Dale. Let's start with you when Mark Carney won the election and how confident you were at the time that his government would maintain many of the climate policies that have been put in place in, say, the last decade or so. What would you say?
Well, I think that platform that the federal Liberals put forward included quite a lot of detail about climate policy, and in particular about things like how to fix industrial carbon pricing. It's one of the most important policies Canada has in its toolkit to reduce emissions. It talked a lot, I think rightfully, about the intersection between growing the economy and smart climate change policy. I think Mark Carney's record and voice on that file reinforces the same, that if you do things right, if you design policies the right way, you can drive both of those objectives. So I think that's where my expectations were.
Okay. Have you been let down? What would you say?
I think the answer is still TBD to some extent. It sounds like there is some new announcements coming. It sounds like there is talk about a climate competitiveness plan that is going to try and link those objectives and deliver some policy changes. That being said, certainly we've seen a bit of a retreat on some climate policies, and I think the onus is now falling squarely on the federal government to start to show some solutions and start to demonstrate that it is committed to these climate policies. It is committed to climate objectives. It is committed to a new vision of competitiveness that's also going to drive emissions reductions in this country. So I'm willing to be patient, but not that patient at this point.
Okay. Adam Thorn, when Mark Carney won the election, how confident were you that the government would maintain many of the climate policies that have been put in place? And what have you thought of the job from Prime Minister Carney so far on that file?
I think going back to the election in the spring and through the summer, it was clear that Canadians had, legitimate concerns about sovereignty, our economic security. It's really important to remember that climate policies, as Dale suggested, they are not in opposition to those goals. Climate policies, those that reduce emissions, but also spur growth of low carbon sectors and accelerate the energy transition, these have a big role to play in bolstering our sovereignty and our economic resilience as a nation. And so exactly as Dale suggested, I think, Carney has a long record of, bringing those two sectors together. So we'll really be looking to see that come forward.
Okay. What about recent news about various climate policies, though? EV sales mandate under review. Clean fuel regulations could be amended. Of course, his first order of business was to cancel the carbon tax, Adam Thorn. What have you thought of that?
Well, we certainly agree with the climate competitiveness agenda. That's absolutely the right focus. We know that global investment is going there. Clean energy investment now outnumbers fossil fuel investment at a rate of 2 to 1. So whatever adjustments come to the clean fuel regulations or the EV sales mandate, we will be watching to see that they're aligned with that clean growth agenda. We recognize that the world has changed in a lot of ways, but the global trends of the energy transition are much deeper and longer term, and so we'll be looking for new announcements that support that.
Okay. On some of these recent announcements, like the review of the EV sales mandate, the suggestion that clean fuel regulations could be amended, and as I said, the carbon tax, ending the carbon tax, I guess didn't come as a surprise. But Dale Beugin, what did you think of those moves by Mr. Carney?
I think there's room for review. There's room for fine-tuning. There's room for thinking about how these different planks of a climate policy strategy fit together. But there is a huge importance that any of that review is based on evidence and analysis and data and frankly, the facts, rather than some of the positions that are floating around, some of the ideology and some of the self-interest from regulated entities that is coming through in the conversation. So, for example, I think it's legitimate to be looking closely at the review of the EV sales mandate to a point, but there's lots of misinformation about how that policy works and about the costs it's imposing on industry. So, sure, there is some new pressure right now given tariffs on the automotive sector. But in reality, how those firms can respond to this existing policy, there's way more flexibility than the narrative out there sort of suggests. In reality, they can change how they're pricing their vehicles. They can lower the cost of electric vehicles and offset that by higher costs for internal combustion engines. They can create and they can draw on access to different flexibility mechanisms in this policy. There is way more options for automotive companies than their response to the policy currently suggests. So sure, let's fine-tune this policy, but at the same time, especially in the absence of the consumer carbon tax, there's a real need to drive the transition in personal vehicles towards net zero, to create the opportunities for consumers to have those electric vehicle options available for them, and to have that choice. So yes, let's design flexible policy, but let's design policy that works. The consumer carbon price is another interesting example that, going back to the election, we put out work at the Climate Institute that showed, yes, the consumer carbon price mattered for emissions reductions, but the industrial carbon price, the policy that this government has committed to keeping and improving, is even more important in terms of reducing emissions. So in terms of these reviews, let's draw on that evidence. Let's use the analysis that's out there to drive on the policies that matter most.
Okay, we'll stop here. There's so much to talk about on this particular topic. From the Pembina Institute, Adam Thorn. From the Canadian Climate Institute, Dale Beugin. We'll be right back. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Talking about environmental policy today, from the Pembina Institute, Director Adam Thorn is with us, and from the Canadian Climate Institute, Executive Vice President Dale Beugin. Everybody is waiting to see the list. The list. What's on the list? Projects in the national interest. Now, today, there's a story from Radio Canada, French CBC, that no pipelines are on the list. According to 3 sources speaking with the CBC, there's no oil pipeline project on the table. But a little further down in the story, it says, behind the scenes, a Liberal source insists the absence of a pipeline on the initial list does not mean that one will never happen. Approval of a gas pipeline project is also not ruled out. Okay. So what do you think of that news? That's not going to go over well, I'm sure you know, in the province of Alberta. But Adam Thorn, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it makes sense, given no private company has put its hand up to invest in one. The federal government's role here is really to fast-track projects that are ready to go so that we can leverage private capital in our economy. If there's no private capital being offered, there's no issue for the federal government to solve. I think maybe more concerning here is that we haven't heard about other potential nation-building projects come out of the province of Alberta. There's a lot that could be done to grow low-carbon industries like manufacturing and petrochemical, but the focus on a non-existing pipeline or one that hasn't been proposed may mean that the province loses out on other opportunities to diversify its economy.
Okay. Well, what about Pathways Alliance, carbon capture and storage, Mr. Thorn? What about that?
Well,
is that in the national interest?
We would encourage a project if that project is being supported by private capital. You know, if the industry would like to underwrite the risk of those investments themselves, it shouldn't be the Canadian taxpayers.
Okay. Dale Beugin, if this reporting is accurate, nobody's seen this list yet. So if this reporting is accurate, what's your reaction? No pipeline on the list.
I think about this similar to the way Adam does. You got to think about, yes, are there projects on the list to clear the path for regulatory approvals? That's not the same thing as will the government pay for these projects? Will we put public dollars behind these projects to make them happen? So I think that's exactly right, that we want private dollars. We want private capital markets to be driving these projects. The federal government can't afford to build all of these projects using public dollars. And I think the fact that there aren't private dollars racing to those projects reflects the global state of the energy transition. Electricity and batteries are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And as a result, demand, both here in Canada and internationally, is starting to shift. It hasn't gone all the way. There's still ongoing demand for gas and oil, but these are long-lived projects. These are projects that are going to last for years and years and years. And I think public dollars should be very carefully used, and they should be used for projects that are going to pay off over the duration of those projects for public benefits, not for private benefits. So I think
what do you think about this? What do you think about this from some critics will say, well, of course, there's no private sector company who's, leaping into action to build a pipeline right now because we have a very burdensome regulatory regime with things like C-69 and C-48 and the emissions cap, these sorts of things. And that if the path was cleared there would be a private sector proponent for a pipeline. What about that, Dale?
The federal government still has an obligation to take care of its accountabilities. It can't ignore its obligation to engage with Indigenous rights holders. It can't ignore its obligations to make sure that these projects make sense from an environmental perspective as well. just eliminating those policies isn't going to accelerate them. It's not going to attract private capital because there'll be all kinds of resistance on the ground. The idea here is to simplify and make those regulatory processes and packages more efficient and more simple. You can't just move away from them entirely either.
What do you think, Adam?
Absolutely agree. I mean, the Major Projects Office is designed to facilitate, the fast approval of these types of projects. And even with that office in place, we still haven't seen private capital come forward to put forward for those pipelines. And I think Dale is absolutely correct when we're talking about consultation with Indigenous people. Doing that effectively is how you actually accelerate these projects. It's not slowing them down. So the government can't simply, cease that responsibility. And I think doing so, that is facilitating that kind of consultation, in fact, will help move those projects faster.
Okay. We'll be right back. And another hot issue. What are we going to do about Chinese EVs? Should we let those vehicles into this country? We'll ask our guests today on our panel. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Adam Thorn is here. He's the director at the Pembina Institute and executive vice president of the Canadian Climate Institute, Dale Beugin. Okay. What should happen with Chinese-made EVs? There's a 100% tariff on made-in-China EVs. China responded with tariffs on canola, pork, and seafood. Premier Mo, for example, in Saskatchewan, would like to see those tariffs lifted. It's under consideration, according to news reports by the Prime Minister, but no movement yet. What do you think should happen with made-in-China electric vehicles, Adam Thorn?
Well, given the challenges in our trade relationships with the U.S. right now, I think it is really very reasonable for Canada to reevaluate our position on tariffs on Chinese EVs. Canada needs to diversify our trade and investment relationships, and granting access to the Canadian market in return for setting up some manufacturing and creating jobs in Canada is certainly something that is worth pursuing.
Okay. So if the tariffs are lifted, what you're saying, Adam, is if the tariffs are lifted, it shouldn't just be allowed to sell those vehicles here. They should have to, it should be contingent on them setting a manufacturing base here. So is that
absolutely
right?
There should be, obviously, those types of agreements should be negotiated.
Okay. Dale, what do you think? What should happen with made-in-China electric vehicles? Should they be allowed in the country?
I think they should consider pretty carefully the idea of lifting those tariffs. We need low-cost electric vehicles in this country. That's what consumers want. It's what enables the path to net zero. It just makes a lot of sense. I get that there are other dimensions here, that there are some security concerns, that there is sensitivities around protecting the relationship with the U.S. and matching what the U.S. is doing. So fair enough that there's some complications, but from a climate perspective and from a trade perspective, it makes sense to look really closely at moving away from those tariffs.
Okay. Have either of you driven one of these made-in-China EVs? Either of you?
I haven't. No, I've heard good things, but I haven't tried one.
No? Okay. I mean, $13,000 for an EV. What kind of game changer would that be for Canada? A $13,000, if they could sell it for that here. A $13,000 EV.
I think it's a big-time game changer. I mean, that is what you want the kinds of climate policies we've talked about to do. You want to create competition for cheaper, lower carbon options exactly like those EVs. And so that's the kind of market response that would come from more competition amidst domestic producers as well.
I absolutely agree. Affordability really should be the guiding star here. That's what's going to drive the uptake of these vehicles. I think it would be an absolute game changer.
Okay, very interesting. Boy, there's lots happening on that file, I have to say. And we're watching it with great interest. I really appreciate your insight and your knowledge today. Thank you so much to the both of you. Speak soon.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye. From the Pembina Institute, that's Director Adam Thorn, and from the Canadian Climate Institute, Executive Vice President Dale Beugin. So again, yeah, we expect this list about projects in the national interest to be released tomorrow. Mr. Carney let that be known today during a speech to the Liberal caucus in Edmonton. And according to reporting from French CBC, Radio Canada, there's no oil pipeline on the list because there's no company that's stepping up to build it. So that's a very interesting development that we're certainly reporting on here at News Radio. But Talkback is coming up next. And talk about comments from Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Kind of a starting point for Talkback today. Doug Ford says young people who are having a hard time finding jobs just aren't looking hard enough, or they're not taking the right jobs. And if they look a little bit harder and maybe accept jobs they don't really want to do, then they won't have any problems finding jobs. Meantime, Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative Party leader, says young people are screwed. They are generation screwed. That's coming up on Talkback right after the news.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. Today's topic, young Canadians, the challenges they face. We have some questions for you. Do you think younger Canadians are getting a raw deal? Are they getting a raw deal? Or do you think younger Canadians have all the opportunities that other generations had? They just don't have the same expectations. We want to jump back into this topic again today for lots and lots of reasons, from jobs to housing to the likelihood the younger generations will be better off than their parents. But we want to start with what Ontario Premier Doug Ford said yesterday. Ontario Premier Doug Ford was making a speech to the Toronto Board of Trade, and he suggested that young people who say they can't find jobs, they're just not looking hard enough. Look harder and you'll find a job. Might not be the job you want, but there are jobs out there. Let's listen to Doug Ford.
We need to match the people up with the jobs. It may not always be in the area that they want or the sector they want, but we have to start picking up productivity. And it drives me nuts when I see young, healthy people, and they'll call me up saying, I can't find a job. I can assure you, if you look hard enough, it may not be, maybe be in fast food or something else, but you'll find a job.
So that's how Doug Ford sees it, at least in Ontario. Young people just aren't looking hard enough when they go on the job hunt, or they're looking for the wrong kinds of jobs. And if they just lower their expectations, if there are jobs available, fast food jobs, there are jobs available. How true do you think that is? Any truth to that? Is Doug Ford onto something there, or is Doug Ford out of touch with how hard it is these days for young people to find jobs? That's a good place to start. Then there's Pierre Poilievre from a few days ago, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. He was making an announcement in Mississauga that the federal government should cancel the temporary foreign worker program. We talked about that last week. And one of the reasons he says that program needs to go is because younger Canadians are being passed over for a lot of jobs, especially low-wage first-time jobs. But Poilievre said something else during that event. He said younger Canadians, they are generation screwed. Let's listen to that.
Young people today form what I call generation screwed. Let's look at the situation for this generation. It is the first generation that cannot afford a home in Canadian history. And now, the double gut punch. They have the highest, or the worst employment numbers of any group of young people since the late 1990s. So you can't get a job. And even if you did have a job, you can never buy a home after 10 years of Liberal government.
Generation screwed is what Poilievre is calling younger Canadians. Generation screwed. We screwed them. The government screwed them. The Liberals screwed them. Whatever. They're screwed. It's not the first time that turn of phrase has been used to describe the challenges a lot of young people are facing with issues like employment and high housing costs. Generation screwed. Are they screwed? Sorry to be so crude with the language, but this is the language our politicians are using these days. Is it true? Are the younger generations, to use Mr. Poilievre's word, screwed? Now, there's been this organized campaign led by this professor from the University of British Columbia by the name of Paul Kershaw, and it's called Generation Squeeze. Generation Squeeze. Part of that group's premise is that it's really a boomer's world. Gen X, maybe, but really a boomer's world. I mean, if you're over 55, you're into your 60s, you've got it made. It's your world. And the younger generations, especially Gen Z, they are just stuck living in a boomer's world. That boomers, Gen X, sitting on all kinds of wealth because they could afford the homes, and their homes have gone way up in value. And that younger Canadians just don't have the same opportunities. This is from a talk Professor Kershaw made a few years ago. Let's listen to this.
If you take the typical 25 to 34-year-old working full-time, her or his wages are down several dollars an hour, even though sure, he is twice as likely to have post-secondary certificate of some sort compared to the past. And because so many more people are getting post-secondary today, they're starting out with larger student debts than ever before, in part because tuition is also higher than it was in the past. And with jobs that pay lower wages, often few if any pensions, with larger student debts, young people are starting out having to pay housing prices that have nearly doubled. Yes, the very housing prices that have gone up so much over recent decades, which are driving up the wealth of the typical 55 to 64-year-old in this country, literally nearly tripling it over a generation compared to the same age group in the past, is precisely the same housing trend which is crushing the dreams of home ownership for far more younger people today than ever before, and making it far more challenging for young people to get a financial foothold.
So for young people, according to Professor Kershaw, young people, they're better educated than ever, but they're being paid less, being shut out of the housing market because of a generational increase in the value of homes, and that's not fair. And something should be done about it. You think that's true? You're over 55, the world is your oyster. If you're under 35, you're being squeezed. 1-833-668-2577. This is not the first time we've talked about this. Whenever we've talked about this in the past, the counter-argument goes something like this, and Doug Ford might be on to something. Younger Canadians don't have the same work ethic as older generations. Their expectations of life in the workplace are unrealistic. They want the wrong kinds of jobs. They don't want to get dirt under their fingernails. Or younger Canadians have more extravagant tastes than previous generations. They want the finer things in life, the hardwood floors, stainless steel appliances, nice car in the driveway, skip the dishes, Uber Eats a few days a week. Any truth to that? If young people these days want to have the same quality of life as their parents or their grandparents did, they just need to pull up their socks, pound the pavement a little more. Learn the value of a hard day's work and the value of $1 and learn to make sacrifices. If they did that, they'd have it made in the shade. Where do you come down on this whole thing? Really hope you'll take part in the discussion today, and whether you really do think younger generations in this country are screwed, or whether you think younger generations need to pull up their socks, work harder. What's your opinion? All lines are available now, 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called before, just mention that. We'll make your call a priority. It's Now You Know, it's Talkback, it's News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you think younger generations in this country are screwed? Or do you think the younger generations need to be more realistic, have more realistic expectations, need to work harder? What's your opinion? 1-833-668-2577. The inspiration for Talkback today, I've listened to this soundbite from Doug Ford quite a few times now. I'm just trying to figure out whether you think there's a kernel of truth to this or whether this is an Ontario premier and a political leader in this country with a very high profile, whether this is someone who is just out of touch with reality and living in some kind of la land. Can we listen to Doug Ford again, please?
We need to match the people up with the jobs. It may not always be in the area that they want or the sector they want, but we have to start picking up productivity. And it drives me nuts when I see young, healthy people, and they'll call me up saying, I can't find a job. I can assure you, if you look hard enough, it may not be, maybe be in fast food or something else, but you'll find a job.
What do you think about that? True? Or an out-of-touch political leader when he suggests, there are jobs out there, it's just you're not looking hard enough, not willing to accept jobs that maybe you think are beneath you. Get that fast food job. Robin, let's take Robin's call up first today on Talkback. Hi, Robin.
Hi.
Hi, Robin.
I just want to say thanks for having me on.
My pleasure.
I've been a realtor for 27 years, and I can tell you the expectations of first-time homebuyers has drastically changed. And what people expect to get for their first home has become higher. They're not willing to settle for less, and they're not willing to address the fact that the market has changed. Like, I routinely counsel first-time home buyers to say, hey, why don't you buy a house with a suite in the basement? You can still qualify. They use the income from the suite towards your qualifying income, and then you can buy a detached house. And they say, but I don't want someone living in my basement. Well, that's how you get the house you want. And then I've got a 20-year-old that's about to buy a house. He saved $40,000 because I taught him to start saving at 15. So he has $40,000 for his down payment. My kids understand the first house they buy is going to be a house with a suite in the basement. And they can either live upstairs with roommates or live in the basement with suites. And you'd be amazed how when you have the conversations, a lot of first-time home buyers, they snub their nose at that and they say no. And then you hear them say, well, I'm going to have to get a cosigner. Congratulations. So did I when I first got my first house. And I know lots of people who, when they bought their first house, they either got cash from their parents or a cosigner. This isn't a new thing. This is a very normal thing that's happening. And
so
then
do you think with the younger generations then that the expectations are unrealistic?
So I don't like calling it the younger generation. I would say I think everyone's expectation is unreasonable nowadays. Because I don't think it's just a younger generation. I think it's all first-time home buyers.
All first-time home buyers. Okay.
So, and I think that also, like, my 20-year-old sat there and said he couldn't get a job too, and tried on his own for almost a month looking for a job and couldn't find one. And then I sat down beside him, and we made sure that he applied for jobs, like a job, 8 hours a day. And I sat beside him and I coached him on what was the right answer and, why are you saying that? And I taught him how to apply for a job. And then suddenly he had 3 jobs.
Okay. So you think there might be a kernel of truth to what the premier is saying there?
I do, and I agree.
You do?
Like, I know he would be like, well, I really want a job. He goes, I really want a job like from home. I said, congratulations. That's not happening.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Robin. Thank you. Who's up next? Is it Maureen? Maureen? Hi, Maureen.
Hi.
Maureen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Maureen. I hear you just fine, Maureen. What's your opinion on the topic?
Great.
Young people. Did we screw them?
Yes.
We did. Okay.
Yes, right. I really think we did, because I know some very young people, and they can't afford very much, and they are working hard. I can guarantee the people that I know, they're working 2 or 3 jobs. They are exhausted, and they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to pay the rent and try to save a little bit money for the house. When we were working part-time, when we took any job, retail, whatever, we can at least afford. The job was the amount of money suited for what we could afford in buying a house or other things. Now, minimum wage, you're not going to get a house. You're not going to cut it. You have to have at least 2 or 3 jobs.
Well, I mean, nobody's expecting to buy a house on a minimum wage job. I mean, but
no,
I would say rent an apartment. It's harder to rent an apartment making minimum wage. That's probably accurate, I would suggest.
It is.
Yeah.
And the government is giving money to build new houses, but we're not building affordable houses. Like one of the guys that you had on your program earlier, he said we have to
Avi
start,
Lewis,
going back to affordable housing, right? So, no, I think the kids are working hard. There are jobs, you're right. There are jobs out there I see help wanted all the time.
Okay.
But it's usually minimum wage, and they can't get by on that. So they're getting quite down about this because they do work 2 or 3 jobs. They are working hard. The ones I know are working hard. They're trying very hard to save for a house. But I think the older generation like me, we have to help them out because it's quite different now. Everything's very unaffordable now. So I think we should help them out.
Thank you, Maureen. We'll be right back. We're off and running today on this one, on Talkback today. 1-833-668-2577. The younger generation in this country, are they screwed? Are they screwed? Or do they have to be more reasonable with their expectations? Maybe work a little harder. 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you think the younger generations in this country are screwed, or do you think younger generations just need to be more realistic, maybe work harder? What's your opinion? 1-833-668-2577 on Talkback. Lee is up next. Lee's in Calgary today. Hi, Lee.
Hi there.
Hi, Lee.
Absolutely. I don't know where. It may be different in Toronto than it is in Alberta, but I have a 30-year-old son who has a really good career. He makes a really good living, twice as much as what I made at that age. I bought my first starter home for $139,900. These kids that are buying their first houses now are looking at $500,000 and above. Jump.
Wow.
So they're going to need our help to do that. And that's in like the big, ritzy, desirable area, but a safe, want to start a family. So, and then a 16-year-old child, and I did the same thing as what your first caller was saying, sat down with him, went through his resume, did some mock interviews with him. He applied for probably about 15 or 20 jobs in our area, and I do live in an area that has a high concentration of new Canadians, and he couldn't get a job.
Okay.
So
what do you think about what Doug Ford said? The Ontario Premier said, well, you look harder. Lower your expectations.
He's living in La La Land. He's
living in La La Land. Okay.
This is a kid that's applying for dishwasher, busboy, working in fast food restaurants, Tim Hortons. He's 16. He wants to be in a place that's close to home so it's convenient for him to get there. And nothing, absolutely nothing. So yeah, they are getting screwed. And I know earlier you had a conversation about the immigration laws, and yeah, I do believe that they need to be specific to the industry, because you have far too many people that are coming and bringing, 6 people with them, and yeah, they are taking these jobs that normally are high school.
So you want that change? Yeah, you want immigration reforms. Absolutely. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't want to get too. I mean, if we go down the immigration rabbit hole, it'll take over the whole show. So I don't want to. We did that last week, so we had a great conversation last week about that. But when I say there's this thought out there in some quarters, young people have the deck is stacked against them right now. When it comes to jobs and housing, you're saying you're darn right.
If it wasn't for us, because you had also mentioned about, I'm a Gen Xer, as having some kind of wealth. Well, our wealth is going to supporting our children now. Like, I'm supporting my 16-year-old. He has to have walking around money. And I'm helping out my 30-year-old so that he can buy a house. So that's where our wealth is going. And yeah, we're all the screwed generation.
Okay, all right. Okay. 1-833-668-2577. If you're on the line, stay on the line. We'll get to you shortly, right after the latest breaking news on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
You think younger generations in this country are screwed? I know it's a crude word, but it's being used by politicians now to describe the plight of the younger generations. Screwed. Or do you think younger generations are unrealistic in their expectations. Whether that's the kind of home they should be living in or whether that's the kind of job they should have. 1-833-668-2577. Sean in Cambridge, I believe, is next. Hello, Sean. You with me, Sean?
Hey, good afternoon. Yeah,
very good.
I think Uncle Doug is out to lunch.
You think he's out to lunch?
I was just thinking the difference between when I was in my 20s and my younger relatives now. I could get a job, and it was a permanent job. When I look at my company now, we hire people on contract. They don't get any benefits. You know, the pay is a lot lower than I used to get. Like when we hire somebody, it's for maybe a year and a half. It's just like that's all they're going to get. It's not permanent. Very few people get permanent now. It's ridiculous. And then I look at my niece and my nephew. When I retire, I'll be getting more money. Like, okay, I get a pension. They will not get a pension. It's ridiculous. This all goes back to the 80s and the Reagan trickle-down economics. It didn't trickle down. They kept their money. And I mean, it was a race to the bottom, and now we are reaping what we started back then. Finally, this is end-stage capitalism. And
end-stage capitalism,
our youth are paying the price. Yeah, our youth are paying the price.
Okay. What do you think? Doug Ford says, well, just look harder.
Well,
there are jobs out there. Maybe you don't like the job. Maybe it's a little harder than the job you want to do, but there are jobs out there.
Yeah, where? Like I live in Cambridge. We're like average house between 600,000 to 900,000. We have these giant roads, like a 6-lane highway right through the city with fast food restaurants on. You have to own a car to get there. Our transit is horrible. So the parents would have to drive their kids to it. If the parents aren't at work, like our whole society is so messed up. It's incredible. It's set up. Like I said, it's just unbelievable how bad it is.
Okay. Thank you. Sean? Very bleak outlook from Sean. The very capitalist system is at risk. John up next. From Sean to John. Hello, John.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good,
how's it going?
John. Good.
Oh, man.
Did we screw them?
2 points I want to... I got 2 points. I got one, comment. And, I just started making 6 figures this year, and it's like I pay $3,500 a month plus utilities with my spouse, Why? Like, we can't even try to buy a house if we tried. And the unfortunate part is, why are we not, why are the Liberals not willing to maybe even lift that 5% down? Instead, everybody's trying to get ahead. Sure, people have a couple $1,000, but to go beyond that threshold and being like, holy crap, we're trying to save, and it's like, we're only saving a couple $100 a month. Why not lift that first-time home buyer and be like, hey, listen, we know you're struggling, but we're going to remove that 5%. We need you to have a threshold in your bank account that we must see. It has to be there for at least a year that we know that you haven't touched it or gone below that amount. Hey, would you be open to taking another percent higher on the house, but that's in assurance of, hey, we're not going to take that entire amount of money that you just saved for the down payment. It's going to add a couple extra years on the mortgage, but people are going to be able to get ahead and start getting the investment that they need. It would boost the economy like crazy. You'd have people lining up everywhere trying to buy a house. And if that's what they want, they could have that by removing that first time. And I'm not talking about people that already bought houses trying to buy another house. It would be exclusively for people that meet the threshold for certain percentage of like the house value that they're able to afford. Like I'm paying $3,500 a month for rent. Why the hell can I not have a mortgage for $2,500? Right?
$3,500 a month. You're paying $3,500 a month in rent?
Plus utilities, yeah. It's
Plus
almost
utilities.
$4,000 a month. Yeah, like we have two dogs, right? So not everyone's going to rent to us, and unfortunately,
that's the place.
The reality.
Let me ask you, how old are you?
I'm 35. I live in Applewood.
35.
So,
okay. All right.
And you know what I mean? Like, I just think that would be a crazy good stepping stone. The banks would make more money by charging a little bit more on interest. You could have more money in your pocket knowing, hey, the bank didn't just take that $20,000 I managed to just finally save. Now I got to start re-saving after I just bought a house. God forbid something happens in the house, because we all know how that ends up being. If you buy a house, there's going to always be something wrong with it, even on new builds, right? So
sure.
why not, get where people are coming from. Let's not do the 5% down. Let's let them keep money in their bank account so that we know that they can cover the mortgage for at least a year. Because banks, if you don't pay your mortgage, they just take it. They're not losing money. They just gain money to resell it. So why don't the banks work with the Liberals, go, hey, maybe this is a good idea. Let's try it out. I'm just saying, it would be phenomenal.
But you would say 35 years old, making six figures, paying big rent, $3,500 a month, that the deck is stacked against you.
Yeah, man, it really is.
Yeah, man. Okay.
Who doesn't have bills? I'm taxed.
Oh, bills. Yeah, don't get me started about bills. Yeah, okay. Everybody's got bills. Everybody's got bills.
Right.
That's not a generational thing. All right, we'll stop here. Thank you. 1-833-668-2577 to have your say on Talkback today. Popular one today. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we have been asking today if the younger generations have been screwed. Screwed by the government, screwed by older generations on jobs, on housing, or is it all about expectations for those younger generations on both jobs and housing? What's your opinion? On Talkback today, busy one, Andrew is, no, not Andrew. Who is it next? Daniel, sorry. Daniel. Yeah, jam phone lines today. Daniel. Hello, Daniel.
How are you, sir?
Very good, Daniel. Thanks. What would you say,
I just
sir?
wanted to give my 2 cents on it. I'm 20. I moved out at 19.
Okay.
I moved to Canada in 2013 with my mom when I was 8 years old, just me and my mom. And honestly, yeah, I think definitely there's not a breath that I know I'm on the radio. There's not a breath that I could get a house right now. Everything I'm seeing that's in Calgary, it's like 400 plus. If I want a house that's like 200 to 100, I got to go out of town. But it's like, there are jobs, dude, but it sucks, man. Like, I was working at 16 in high school to buy my first car. I was working construction, and I had to help my mom pay the bills. And that was my only choice. I'd skip class. I can go pick up a couple extra shifts during the day. My boss is really awesome, and he'd save work for me on the weekends. But, like, not everybody can go do that, man. And I get that. And it's like, yeah, there's all these fast food jobs and stuff like that. And I, like, Doug Ford definitely has a point. Like, there's a lot of jobs. It's just some of them suck. And I've worked some really awful jobs under some people who I wanted to throw my wrench at and tell them to, like, but I saved my money and I put myself through trade school, and now I've got a decent apprenticeship and stuff like that. But it's hard. And, like, honestly, even when I think I'm a full journeyman, I don't think I'm going to be, like, I might be making enough to get close to a house, but it's got to be me and my girlfriend, which we live together, and it makes things easier. But if you're moving out on your own, man, you're cutting your teeth thin. With me and her
what about
together,
this idea? Okay, I just want to pick up on something that you said. Okay, if I want something in the city, it's like, 400, 500 grand. And if I want something, say half the price of that, I have to move out of town. Why don't you move out of town?
It's mostly some of the work. So I was looking at a house in Beugin, but then the closest like heavy duty dealer or anywhere I could work was like an hour's out. Or if there was anything in town, they wanted somebody with more experience, but like they're not willing to give the money, so nobody's working for them. But then I apply. Oh, I don't apply. And also, I don't agree with all this, like, you got to apply for a million jobs online. Nobody's going to hire you if you're applying online. I tried that for like 2 or 3 months when I was first trying to get a heavy-duty apprenticeship, and I gave up. So I printed about 100 resumes, and I went to every shop in town, and one shop said yes, 3 others gave me some interviews. And it's like, you just got to hustle. And it's about, like, if you have that safety net, dude, stay home. If you're with your parents right now and you're 16 and they're not making you work, stay home and enjoy it. I was working real hard when I really didn't want to be, and I was missed out on like school and stuff like that.
So do you feel as though, I mean, to the question today, that the younger generation today is screwed?
I'm definitely feeling it a little bit, man. Like, I go to the grocery store, everything's so expensive.
Yeah,
I go to pay my bills. Sorry, I know you probably got other callers, but like, I'm definitely feeling it, but I don't agree that like we're absolutely catastrophically screwed. You might have to really, really give her, bud, but you'll get her done.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Daniel. Very colorful. We haven't taken a call from Nova Scotia yet. Can we take a call from Nova Scotia and get Keith on the air? Can we put Keith on the air here? Steiner. Okay. In Dartmouth then. Okay. Steiner.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Hi there.
I'm a first-time caller, and
I appreciate that.
I emigrated to Canada in 1966.
Okay.
I was a graduated engineer from Sweden, but when I come to Canada, I worked like a grease monkey. I went to sea fixing equipment, and it took me 10 years before I could afford buying a home.
Okay.
But,
okay.
You know, I think trade school and engineers, and we need it. We need people that can go to sea on ships. We need people to build this wonderful country, and they don't all come from universities. And I think we are overselling the universities in Canada. Another thing that I
so
had
Steiner, if I could, how old were you when you bought your first house?
I was 34.
34. Okay, 34.
Yes.
And that in Nova Scotia?
In Halifax.
In Halifax.
And,
how much was it? Do you remember?
My first house, it was a bit over $50,000.
$50,000. Wow, $50,000.
But
and that would have been the mid 70s, mid 70s around there.
76.
76. Okay, all right.
Yes, and
so when you hear the young people today saying, "Look, the homes are so expensive right now. Homes are so expensive. It's so hard to find an affordable home." Do you have sympathy for them?
No, you have to find work, and I think trade school often is better than universities. And the other thing that has helped me in life, I served in the Norwegian Air Force, and that taught me an awful lot. And it also teaches you how to treat people. And Canada has been very, very good to me, Rob. And I have my business that I've developed has been in Newfoundland. Probably 90% of my business has been in Newfoundland. And I'm over 80, and I still go to work.
It's quite a life lived, Steiner. I'm glad I could talk to you today. Thank you. I bet you could tell a lot of stories. We'll be right back on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Right to it. Right back to it. Mike in Calgary. Hi, Mike. You're on the air. What do you think about the plight of the younger generations these days, Mike?
Well, I'm very disappointed in what Mr. Polyev said, because young people are not screwed. In fact, they have more opportunity than ever to be business owners, etc. You just have to you have to be smarter. I mean, they can start landscaping businesses, delivery businesses, you name it. But what I'm seeing here is a trend where parents have done everything for their children. And I'm a much older guy. I went through this. I've been working for some 47 years now, and still working. And I notice, with the technology and the internet, etc. I think it's there's much more opportunity for them. But we got to stop holding their hands. What I'm hearing here online as I was waiting was, "Oh, I can't get a bus to go to work, and my mom won't drive me," and parents giving their kids money, spending their savings on their down payment for their home. Well, you know what? Those kids aren't ready to own a home. Fortunately, I was when I was younger, but not everybody is. There's a few people that can buy homes when they're 18 or when they're in their 20s. I was lucky to get my first place when I was 18. It was a dump. But I fixed it. Wow. I tore the 18. Roof off. I did it wrong, but I had to do it again. Absolutely. Wow. I was 18 years old. I had a full-time job, And you know how I got that full-time job? I phoned the owner of that company every day for 2 weeks straight. And finally he said, "Kid, stop calling me. I'll hire you." And he gave me a date in the new year, and I went to work for them. And, I just think that there's a whole bunch of opportunity out there. You have to be motivated. Parents got to stop doing things for their kids. Let them do it on their own. Unfortunately, that's the generation that we brought up. And they got to adapt. And they have the technology and everything at their hands. And not everybody, not everybody can be an electrician or a welder, or you have to find your way through it. But stop doing everything for them. We just want the government to provide us with an economy, and us as human beings in the world will do the rest. We'll be
so this
trading
idea,
with each other,
young people can't find good jobs, and even if they do land a good job, the housing market is so expensive they'll never own a house. You're kind of dismissing that. It's a minority opinion today. You are,
No,
I think. Yeah.
They got to. I mean, I quit school when I was 16 years old, and I lived under a set of stairs, for crying out loud, in some apartment block. I was homeless for a bit. But what I'm saying is that you have to have some kind of awakening here and understand that home ownership is not for everybody. There's a $4,000 furnace in that thing that you have to fix. You got to wait until you get there in order to be able to own it and repair it. I'm not dismissing it. I don't think I am dismissing it. That young guy Dan who was on before me, he's right. You got to travel in order to get the job. That's why they called it a journeyman. I mean, that's the origin of the word. You have to travel in order to provide your services. That's where it derived from. So,
very interesting, Mike. Yeah. Thank you. Good end to the first hour. Full hour ahead. I know a lot of people are on the line. We'll get to you if you hang on the line. We will get to you on a very busy Talkback today as we talk about the plight of the younger generations and whether the younger generations are generation screwed.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
We have been talking today about whether young Canadians really do have the same opportunities that previous generations had, or whether younger Canadians just have different expectations about what the real world is like. We've had a couple of comments from some leading politicians in this country lately. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, this was yesterday during a speech to the Toronto Board of Trade, with Premier Ford suggesting young people who say they can't find jobs aren't looking hard enough. Let's listen to that clip again.
We need to match the people up with the jobs. It may not always be in the area that they want or the sector they want, but we have to start picking up productivity. And it drives me nuts when I see young, healthy people, and they'll call me up saying, I can't find a job. I can assure you, if you look hard enough, it may not be, maybe be in fast food or something else, but you'll find a job.
And then you had Pierre Poilievre, more big picture, really. It's not the first time I've heard this phrase, generation screwed. The younger generations are screwed. We screwed them. The government screwed them. But this is Pierre Poilievre, generation screwed.
Young people today form what I call generation screwed. Let's look at the situation. For this generation, is the first generation that cannot afford a home in Canadian history. And now, the double gut punch. They have the highest, or the worst employment numbers of any group of young people since the late 1990s. So you can't get a job, and even if you did have a job, you can never buy a home after 10 years of Liberal government.
So it's Pierre Poilievre. Their generation screwed. We want to know what you think. We want to know what you think. Are they screwed? Canadians say, I don't know, under the age of 35, they're screwed, compared to Gen X, boomers, if you're, 50 plus, you've kind of got it made. What would you say? Let's go to Dawn in Guelph today. Hello, Dawn.
Yeah, hi, Rob. Love your
Dawn.
show.
Thank you. What's your opinion?
Okay, I'm in 50 plus, and even over the years, like living in Toronto, living in Guelph, I've found it unaffordable quite a bit. I still don't own it, but I wanted to offer you. I've got two nephews in Guelph who still live at home. One late 20s, one mid 30s. Both gainfully employed, 6 figures. The only problem is, and they've done it for 10, 12 years, it's all piecework. They've got major investments, but it's only worth about 1/3 of the cost of purchasing a house. And the banks reject them for a mortgage. How about that?
Wow.
Now, interesting, the last couple of months, the older nephew achieved a home only because his dad moved to the East Coast and retired, and he took over his mortgage. That's the only way he was able to achieve one.
Right. Okay. Had some help there. So,
Yeah.
to the question, are they screwed? What would you say?
I think it's a hasty generalization because there's a lot of kids out there doing pretty well and making it happen. The screwed part of the X and Z millennials and Zs are that some of them can achieve enough earnings to ever move into a mortgage. So that's based on education situation and all that kind of thing. So there's not much they're going to be able to do about that.
All right. Dawn, thank you for hanging in there. I really appreciate the call from Guelph, Ontario today. To Nova Scotia, Sam is up next in Nova Scotia. Hi, Sam.
Hey, Rob.
Hi, Sam. What would you say?
Can you hear me? Oh,
hear you
sorry.
just fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I would say, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, it's pretty obvious. Like the younger generation is in trouble. I don't think we're doomed, but I'm a journeyman. I'm 27, journeyman electrician. I just got my license. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, journeyman electricians here in Nova Scotia were making $25, $30 an hour, and that was an awesome wage. That was a great job. You were making a lot of money. Guess how much journeyman electricians make here now? It's the same.
It's the same. Okay.
It hasn't changed. Okay. Wages haven't really budged. Obviously, Nova Scotia has caught up in recent years with the rest of the country and having astronomical housing costs, thanks in part to a lot of people moving here during COVID. But I think my opinion is that we've I think it's just an obvious fact of life. I think I would have thought by now that we would have moved past the discussion of are we in trouble and is life unaffordable to obviously it is, and what are we going to do about it?
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I think it's pretty common knowledge nowadays that life has.
Okay.
Everything has related.
So, this idea. Well, if you look hard enough, you'll find a job. Well, it might not be the job you want, but you can find a job, or maybe maybe you have to downgrade your expectations on the kind of house you want to buy. I don't know where you are. Maybe you can't live in Halifax. Maybe you have to go to New Glasgow or Truro or someplace and try and set up shop there. What about something like that?
Well, the way I see it is my parents were born in Lunenburg, worked in Lunenburg, bought their first house in Lunenburg and still live in Lunenburg, as did, my grandparents. And
right.
their grandparents. That opportunity has definitely been taken away from this generation, for sure. Especially in a lot of towns I grew up in Lunenburg. It's a, kind of a hot destination for people to move from away to try and buy a house here. So
lovely.
That doesn't make things
lovely
easy.
Place. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
I can see the attraction of Lunenburg, my friend. No doubt about that. I got to run, though. Thank you. Okay. Be right back. 1-833-668-2577 on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Millennials, Gen Z, Generation Screwed. What do you say? Del in Okotoks. Hello, Del.
Yes. How are you?
Yes. Very good. How are you?
Okay.
Good.
Do I think they're screwed?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they've been screwed. I think they're missing something and missing a few things.
Okay.
Just think of looking at generations behind me. Now, I taught college for 27 years. And what I found was the kids whose parents were paying their way, they sat at the back. The kids who had to contribute to their getting ahead sat at the front. Okay? I found that they're getting less responsible compared to the generations that went before them. A gentleman said he left home at 16 and how responsible and how he made out himself. I look at 16-year-old today, couldn't survive. They could not survive on their own, I don't think. I think the students today, when they're being interviewed, finishing high school and graduating, their expectations, they have too high of an immediate expectations. They expect things to happen right now.
Okay.
There's less focus with the younger generation, I'm finding. We have 4 kids and we have grandkids now and whatever. There seems to be less focus on building a future, of actually putting something together. It's like building a business, but they weren't taught in school how to do it, and a lot of the parents don't teach them how to build their life rather than expecting other people to give it to them, expecting government to give them it. My kids, I ask them certain questions, and their responses are, well, the government should do that. And I went, but the government didn't used to do it. We used to do it.
Okay. Right.
And
right.
So, and then there was.
So, for example, when I was in college, if I could just interrupt, can I just interrupt for a sec? When I was in college, for example, I used to have a instructor who said, ask yourself, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years?
Exactly.
And, develop your plan to, to get there in 5 years where you want to be. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about, that there's no kind of career planning or life planning like that? Where do you want to be in 5 years?
Exactly. And the answer to that question is there's 2 things: what you read and who you associate with. If you associate with people who aren't going anywhere, guess where you're going? And I look at it in Alberta here, we're looking at over 21% loss of tradespeople in the next 5 years.
Wow.
So now, if you're looking at young people and saying, well, why don't you get involved in a trade? Well, the next thing is, I was involved with the apprenticeship board here, and they would go out and do interviews with parents and everything, and they say, yes, 85% of tradespeople make good livings, they do this, that, but I want my kid to go to university. So I kind of have gone through stats and whatever and earnings, and that young gentleman that picked a heavy-duty mechanic, I sent my daughter in the heavy-duty mechanics range. After college, I became a supervisor at Fort Mac, and I tried to get young people to go to Fort Mac. No, I don't want to leave my friends. I don't want to do this. I'm offering them a job, and this was 15 years ago, at $120,000 a year to come up, and they wouldn't come.
Okay. Wouldn't do it.
They
Okay.
would rather
Look,
make 50 or 60,000.
Okay. Look,
So
very interesting all the way around, Del. Yeah, we're gonna have to run there, though. Thank you for calling today. Nancy is up next. Hi, Nancy. Are you with me?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Hi, Nancy. Where are you calling from, Nancy?
I'm calling from near Stratford.
Near Stratford. Okay. Thank you for calling. Go ahead. What's your opinion? Generation screwed. We hear that. What do you think?
I don't think so. I think,
Don't think so.
if
Okay.
they work, no. I do have 2 children. The one just returned from Alberta, is living in Ontario, and him and his fiance were able to buy a house, but they work very hard. They do not have new vehicles. They shop the specials. They entertain at home with friends, and they really watch their money and work that way. I know we did help them a bit with their down payment, but we only topped up what they needed. And that was, they agreed that would be instead of their wedding money. So they would have a smaller wedding and stuff like that. So you know how parents contribute often to the wedding. This was, instead of the wedding, was going towards their down payment. So I feel they both work. And it's not like they have the most high-paying jobs, but they're willing to work and are able to make ends meet at this time. So that was just my thoughts.
Okay, Nancy, thank you for sharing them. Great to hear from you and get your thoughts on that today. It sounds like it's worked out well for your children. We'll be right back, though. We have to stop here. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we have been talking about whether the younger generations are screwed. I know it's kind of crude language, but the politicians are saying it, so we should be saying it here too, I guess. Are the younger generations in this country screwed, or are the younger generations unrealistic with their expectations? Maybe they need to rethink their expectations. What's your opinion? 1-833-668-2577 in Okotoks. It's Kyle up next. Kyle, hi there.
Hey, how are you, Rob?
Very good, Kyle. Thanks for calling. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I'm a little frustrated at some of the opinions that I've heard in the last little bit.
Oh, no.
So to tell you a bit about myself, I'm 23. I own my home. And, I work hard. I'm in the trades. I'm in the oil and gas sector.
Okay.
But if you look at it, like, statistically, your income, what a lot of these older people are growing up, the buying power is not what it is today. And I understand there's, like, the social dynamic of it, I guess, where, some younger people can be entitled, but I'm sure if you were to go look at their generation, you get the same thing. But yeah, so it's frustrating as a young person to constantly kind of have the older generation pushing down on you when you're not really going through, the same problems and dynamics, 30 years ago that you're going through now. A good example, I think, is my younger brother. He's 18, he's out of high school, and like he's looking for work right now, and he had a local retail job. And then unfortunately that was only temporary, just a seasonal position.
Okay.
But then he was, kind of doing what the older people recommend, applying online, going into places, talking to managers. And I was like driving him places to help him out because, since he's not working, it's hard for him to have a car insurance. And it's not the same ball game it used to be. Like, we're way more populated. It's harder to find work. It's more competitive. And I don't think we're generation screwed, but I definitely think that, it's not the same that it used to be.
Oh, thank you very much for your call today, Kyle. In Okotoks, Herman is in Calgary. Hi, Herman. What's your opinion,
Hi, Rob.
Herman?
How you doing?
Very
How you
good,
doing?
Herman. Good.
I was just listening to that gentleman, Kyle, there. Just to let anybody know if they're wondering, the railway's hiring right now. It's $80,000 to start, but you will be working weekends probably for the next 2 years.
Okay.
But
wow.
I just wanted to say, the gentleman, you had a couple of gentlemen call you. The older gentleman that was mentioning about the parents and coddling their children and stuff like that.
Coddling their children, yeah. Holding their hands kind of thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, you had a caller there that said he was 34, and you sort of called him out. You said, well, why don't you go live in the country? You know, the house is cheaper in the country. And then his answer was, well, I'd have to travel an hour to work every day. That there, Rob, is just mind-blowing. What do you mean an hour?
You think that's the wrong attitude? That's the wrong attitude?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. I mean, you got to hustle, right?
Okay.
When my oldest daughter,
we had another caller, another young guy said, well, my parents grew up in this town, lived in this town, still live in this town. Same with my grandparents. Why can't I do the same thing? Why is that an unreasonable expectation?
Well, he just said his parents are still living in the same town. Did his parents work in the same town? Did they? He didn't really describe what his parents did to stay in that same town. Maybe they had to leave and work out of town, like go to Fort McMurray and work 2 weeks out of. Like I talk to young people here, and I go, "Why don't you guys go up north and work?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't want to go away from home for 2 weeks. I don't want to be away from home and stuff like that." Exactly what the other gentleman said.
They're not making the same sacrifices, is what you're saying.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you think the younger generations in this country are screwed? Or are the younger generations unrealistic? They need to have more realistic expectations. Maybe they even have to work harder? Be more flexible? What's your opinion? 1-833-668-2577. It's been very busy today, but we have a few free lines available now. If we want to join the discussion, to Edmonton now. Ben is up next. Thanks for waiting, Ben. You're up next. What's your opinion?
Hey, so thanks for taking my call here today. I've been listening to that. I was kind of on the fence whether I wanted to call in or not here, but I've been hearing some pretty interesting opinions thrown out there today. And I kind of want to go back to what Dell from Okotoks was talking about, a little bit about apprenticeship. So I'm a Gen Xer. I'm 42. I'm journeyman carpenter. I've been working in the trades for, 20 years now. And I've earned a very comfortable living. I'm a homeowner, and I've had no problem finding work through my entire trade career. Now, I worked as a recruiter for a big construction company for about 5 years, and we used to go to high schools and do career fairs. And talking to some of these young people about trades, it was really mixed reactions depending on where we were. So what I found was when you're talking to kids in the cities at their high schools, kids weren't interested in trades. There was kind of an idea that trades were for dumb kids, but then you get out into the country and you go to some of the country schools, and the kids were all over trades because their parents were in agriculture, or dad was a welder, or worked in the oil field, or a pipe fitter, or whatever, right? So I guess I don't agree with the idea that the generation is screwed. There are tons of opportunities out there for young people who are willing to get out of bed in the morning and go to work. And I think it starts in the home. I think it starts with coaching the kids in the home and setting an example for them and showing them what it takes to be a successful person in the work world, in a work environment.
Let me ask you, this is very interesting. When you would go into schools and say, the urban environment, less receptive to a job in the skilled trades as opposed to, say, a smaller community, a rural community, whatever the case might be. Yep. Do you think part of that is the administration of the school? Were they open or encouraging people to pursue a job in the trades or think about a career in the trades? What was your sense of it?
I don't think it would be the administration of the school, because like the curriculum's pretty standard from rural to urban, right? I think what it has to do with is just the environment that these kids grow up in. right?
Okay.
Like when you're
Okay.
in the rural schools, you've got kids that come from farms, right? You've got. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Okay, I gotta
That's
run.
okay. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. No, very interesting points of view. To Monica is up next. Sutina Nation. Monica. Hello, Monica.
Hi. So overall,
Hi.
overall. So I'm on the side that I do think young people have it harder. And like if you just do the numbers and the math and the economy and all of that, like, you know, even with people going to school or not going to school and the challenges of buying a home today, whether you're in rural or urban, and that cost of living as far as food and everything, like, you know, and people who went to school several years ago and that are making good money are still challenged. But if you're going in to purchase a home today, it's hard. So I think, you know, everybody feels the pressure. I don't think it's just a generational thing. And you know what? I'm proud of our young people today. Overall, I think they're doing better. Like when we look at generations and when we talk about, you know, what they stand up for morally, and like our generations have done, I guess, somewhat of a good job, even though we're those people that, you know, we were raised in the time where you go to work with if your leg's broken or whatever, you know, right. And but they're taking care of things on the mental and emotional level and being more understanding. I don't think it's called coddling. I think it's called healing and being better human beings than we are. But I do believe that the challenges economically, like just do the numbers games, never mind all of the, like where people come from, where they've been taught and they've been on iPads and they've been on computers. Just do the numbers game. You know, you put that in front of anybody on the economy and the struggles that are there. It's real, and it's right across Canada. It's not just in one place where it's rural or this community. And yes, there is a lot of opportunities, but even with those opportunities, people are not making, you know, are making big financial decisions and are not getting by. The debt in Canada.
I would say the minority opinion today, if I could just interrupt Monica, is unrealistic expectations, not willing to make the same sort of sacrifices. What would you say to that?
I would say that they are, but like I said, it's challenging, and I'm proud of the young people today.
All right, Monica, really interesting to take your call today as well, and I appreciate the call and for you hanging in there. I know the wait was a bit long. 1-833-668-2577. We're going to stop here, but we'll fit everybody in who's on the line before our show concludes at the top of the hour when we bring you the latest breaking news. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's get to John on the plight of younger generations in this country, whether we're making a mountain out of a molehill when it comes to that. What's your opinion, John? You're up next. Thanks for waiting.
Well,
hi, John.
Okay, I will just give you a little bit of my history of finance.
Sure.
And so I came in, this is my 60th year arrival in Ottawa, just on the same day, 10th of September. I studied in Ottawa, graduated in medical school in 1972. And I interned in London. The salary at that time was $7,000 a year. And I still have a small student loan. So I rented a room at the on-call room, $25 a day, a month. And so I paid down my student loan. And I moved to Calgary in 1981. And I cashed out all my RRSP to buy a house at that time. At that time, the house I bought, I think, was $115,000. But I took out all the 9 years of saving, the RRSP, just to pay the down payment. And within a year, the market dropped, and I was in negative asset. The house the mortgage was more than the price of the house. So I lost everything, all my saving for 9 years. So we keep on working, and we still need the house to live, so we do that. And I private practice in the 90s, when Ralph Kind cut back 5% of our income of the Alberta health payment. And at that time, my accountant told me that my nanny was making more money than my my medical clinic. I always struggle. I have 6 children. They all, but we live out. And my broker, and when we talked, and he said that if he calculated that if he invests in bank stocks rather than his house, he will have more money now than if he knew. So if he rented versus than buying, but the money that he used or the house was to put into stocks, he will have more money now. So anyway, that's my short brief of how I struggled through from 1965 when I came to Canada till now.
Well, I mean, you say, struggling. I mean, you mentioned you had a nanny, you had a broker, you had an accountant. I mean,
oh yeah, but that was later on when I saved enough money, right? But it took me,
sure. I'm just saying I don't have a nanny or a broker or an accountant. I don't even know if they're stockbrokers anymore.
You know but I need how to save.
No, I understand what you're saying, sir.
But
when you hear, like for example, Mr. Poilievre says this generation, the next generation is screwed. They're not going to have the same kind of jobs. Housing is too expensive. They're screwed. What do you think about that?
Well, it's a very complex problem. But one of the things that I mentioned to people was in the time of Reagan, they floated out the gold. That used to be $35 US. You have to 1 ounce of gold as a reserve. But they floated out the gold. So $35, it floated it out. It went up to $200, 200 something. So it's 7 times more. But now it's, $3,000? So it's 900 times.
3,400, yeah.
So we have more money, but the buying power is, if you
the buying power is, right.
The buying power is gone. So we pretend that we have more money, but we don't see, we look at money as a number rather than the buying power.
Okay, that's interesting.
So what I was saying that, so this is the economics dwindled down from there. But I just want to mention that for 9 years I worked as a doctor, although, part of the training, the salary was not good. But I lost everything in all the 9 years of saving when we bought a house.
Yeah. So, you're saying, all generations have their challenges, I guess is what I would take away from our conversation, John. Thank you for your call. Sabrina, Three Hills Nation. Sabrina, are you with me?
Hi,
Sabrina.
Yes. Hi, Rob.
Very good to hear from you.
My call. I love
pleasure.
your show. Really love
Thank
it.
you.
Listen to it all the time.
Great stuff.
25 trades worker. I work in the automotive trades, and my husband is, he works in the trades as well. I work in the trades. We're both providing towards the family, but we still can't find anywhere else that we can and buy. And so my question is for the older generation who has, been on the line and everything, because I've been listening for a while now. And my question for them is, was their wives working when they bought their houses? Was it a dual income household or was it a single income household?
Okay.
Is what I would like to know.
And why do you want to know that?
Well, because I find it with our generation here, and we have dual income households, and we have dual income families here, and they're still struggling. But back in the day, it may or may not have been a single income household, and they were doing just fine. And so that is my question. I would like to know whether it was a single income household or a dual income household.
Okay. It's out there for public discussion. Thank you for hanging in there, Sabrina. We'll be right back. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Multiple news outlets in the United States are now reporting that Charlie Kirk, who is very well known in American political circles and a close ally of Donald Trump, has been shot. Charlie Kirk shot at an event in Utah, a college event. That's what Charlie Kirk does. Charlie Kirk, I would call him probably the leading MAGA influencer. He founded an organization called Turning Point USA, and it's a major youth movement, conservative youth organization. And it goes to high schools and college campuses and university campuses all across the United States. And it kind of preaches the Trump/Republican gospel to those who will take it in. Charlie Kirk has been doing this since he was in his late teens, and he's gone on to be maybe one of the most influential young conservatives in the United States. Anyway, details are pretty scant right now, but apparently this is going to be all over CNN and all over Fox News, that Charlie Kirk has been shot at an event in Utah. The extent of his injuries are unknown. That's just a bit of breaking news right now. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. Just a few minutes left. Really enjoyed the discussion today on whether the younger generations have it more difficult now than previous generations have had. It has hardly been unanimous today. Let's go to George is up next. Hi, George. Thanks for waiting, George.
Hi, Rob. It's
good to hear from you, George.
Here in Cambridge. Good. What has happened, and the best thing that can happen to the new generations? I mean, I know they are. It's going to be really bad. The best thing that can happen is if everything crashes in Canada. Then you start from scratch.
Why would that be good?
Everybody
would be good if everything crashed. Why would that be good?
Well, because you can start over and everybody can afford a house. And you got to get rid of the immigration. Immigration has to go, and no more foreign workers. I mean, this is the biggest problem that's killing Canada. One more thing. I'm glad that the fire planes are built in Canada. And this is
the only issue with that, you mean the water bombers, but there's a long wait list, and one won't be delivered to a Canadian provincial government. I think it's for another 5 or 6 years, something like that. All right, thank you. I disagree with you, George. I mean, I appreciate you calling in, and you kind of got the last word today, but this idea, I think everything should crash in Canada, and housing prices should crash, and the stock market should crash, and we'll just start all over. Well, think about all of those people who are in the older generations and all the equity that they have built up in their homes that they've worked so hard for, and how they're counting on that for their retirement. I mean, think about the consequences of that, let alone everybody's retirement fund if something went terribly wrong with the stock market. Just some thoughts. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion today, everybody. Brand new topic tomorrow. More of your calls, and always the latest breaking news on News Radio.